Welcome to Your City Connections, where you get to meet entertaining and informative guests. Guests such as an artist with a brush or with a camera, and guests with a violin. City Connections, providing insightful interviews with favorite son Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb. To city commissioners, the mayor. Interviews with a rodeo queen, to beauty queen, and even a NBA player. Now, join Steve Keim as he discusses another engaging topic on City Connections.
Hello again and welcome to City Connections. I'm Steve Keim, and again it's my privilege to bring another exciting guest to us, and they always have that Enid connection, and thank you for joining us on City Connection. My guest today is a CEO coach, a board expert. I know that he serves on numerous boards here in Oklahoma and probably across the country. He's also a professional speaker. He's the co-author of a book in regarding to leadership, and we'll talk about that in just a few moments. Former CEO in my hometown of Perry, America, of Ditch Witch Construction Equipment. He's currently the CEO of Giant Partners, located in Edmond. He's also an Enid High School graduate. Yes, he went to high school and it happened to be in Enid, and he has a connection to Vance because his dad was commander at Vance Air Force Base. I believe that was back in the maybe early 70s. We'll find the specifics on that. So if you would, please welcome to the ETN studios a former Enid resident, David Woods. David,
great to be here.
Being here.
Thank you so much.
And as we're taping this, it's raining, and as I said, doesn't seem to rain much in Enid, so keep coming back.
It rained all the way up from Oklahoma City today. So
we appreciate you being here. Let's start at the beginning. We've got a lot of topics, and we have plenty of time today, but let's just start with the connection to Enid. Why don't you kind of fill everybody in, because there's somebody watching right now saying, man, I've lost track of this guy.
Right. Well, my connection to Oklahoma actually goes back to when I was a kid. We were traveling cross country. Dad was in the military, and when we would move across country, we would stop in Tonkawa.
Yep.
I had a uncle there that was an optometrist, and for my entire childhood, that's all I knew of Oklahoma was Tonkawa, Oklahoma, and actually always enjoyed it. And so fast forward, I was about junior high age, and Dad got stationed at Vance. Came in first as basically he was commander, as you mentioned. Yeah. And that was when I was in 9th grade going to Waller, and then in 10th grade going to Enid High School. And then he ended up getting transferred to Del Rio, Texas for my junior year. So it wasn't the most pleasant stop that we ever made on the Air Force journey. And so a year into that, he got transferred to Vietnam for a second tour. He was first time he was a fighter pilot. Okay. Second time he was commander of a base in Vietnam. And so anyway, when he got transferred, my mom came to me down in Del Rio, Texas, and asked me. We'd lived in Arizona and like that. We'd lived in Virginia and like that. And her relatives were all from North Carolina. She goes, well, where do you want to, we can move anywhere we want. Where do you want to go? I said, I want to go back to Enid, Oklahoma. Yeah. And there's something about, at that age, when things just really start clicking. And I had just some good friends. And so it was that 30-second conversations, all it was, sort of changed the trajectory of my life. Sure. And that happens to most people. You think back and you have that one moment. That was my one moment that I went, wow, had my mom not asked me that question and given me the grace to make that decision, I wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. You know, a lot of individuals in town, David, they're aware of Vance. They know it's out on the edge of town. They see the jets and the trainers going all the time. But sometimes that's the extent. They just know that Vance Air Force Base is there. Your dad, as a commander of Vance back in, now, would this be early 70s? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell us what it's like. Your dad's the commander, so tell us about the experiences of that.
Well, I always loved
Did you live on the?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, then we did. The first, when he was commander, when we came back, just me and my mom, we actually lived a little tiny 2-bedroom house on Broadway. I mean, it was just her and I. My older brother was already in college by then, but I loved living on base. It was its own little community. I mean, you had the benefit of being right here in Enid, which I loved Enid too, but every base I lived on I really enjoyed, and Vance was very special. I could most people, probably the screaming trainer jets going over bugs them, but I can tell you as a kid, that was just, that was as good as smelling bacon. I mean, I just like I liked the military, everything about the military growing up.
Well, one thing about our special guest, David Woods, today is that I got reintroduced to David, several months ago, and my mother-in-law and his mother happened to live in the same retirement center, and so we crossed paths. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to visit with your mom and get all the scoop on her son behind the scenes. And I remember sitting down at dinner one time with my mother-in-law and your mother, and she was talking or reminiscing about those Enid High School days, and she talked about you being in the band and the swim team, and she was really proud of her son in that role. Tell us a little bit about those days, if you will, being a swimmer and then also in band.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything in my life.
That was way back there, right?
It was. It feels like yesterday, but it was way back there. Yeah, everything that happened to me, it was somebody else that kind of took me under their wing. And band was, for Enid viewers that are old enough to remember that, there was a Mr. Griffin, and he was the iconic band leader that was just changed a lot of lives. Yeah. So I really enjoyed band. Ended up, I wasn't very good. Started on trumpet, and then came time for tryouts, and I really hadn't practiced. And about that time, they said, "Does anybody want to play baritone?" And I raised my hand simply so I wouldn't have to do my trumpet. Yeah. And then a few years, fast forward another year, and I still hadn't practiced. And somebody said, "We need a tuba player. Does anybody want to play the tuba?" So I did that. And anyway, that's how I ended up on tuba. It was actually avoiding conflict more than anything. I actually got pretty good at tuba. I ended up being first year out of about 8 guys, so it was fun. And then on the swim team, couldn't play basketball, wasn't any good at that, wasn't any good at football, wasn't any good at most things. But for whatever reason, during my life, I was always on a little swim team. And so Enid had a really great swimming program back then. I would imagine still does, but really enjoyed being on swim team.
Well, if you would, kind of fill in the blanks for us, if you will. Graduated from Enid High School, and I know you've got an impressive educational background. Tell us, on an academic level, what were you involved in after that?
Right.
You walk across the stage, and you're on your way to somewhere.
Well, I was on my way to the Air Force Academy. That's where I was supposed to go. Okay. I had gone through it. It's quite an ordeal to get into the Air Force Academy, and I had gone through all of that process, but my senior year, I also happened to meet the love of my life, and she was a year younger here in Enid. So I'm sure my dad was disappointed in the moment, but I said, I don't want to go to the Air Force Academy. I want to go somewhere closer. So I was going to go over to Missouri, to Westminster, and then I thought, wow, that's still a long way from Enid. And so I ended up going to Oklahoma State University. And I remember telling my dad I was going to go there because it was close to Enid. And he looked at me and he goes, "Geographic location is a piss poor reason to pick a college." And I thought, yeah, but that's all I've got right now, and I love this girl, and I want to be near her. So that's how I ended up at Oklahoma State University, and I have a really close relationship with OSU right now. In fact, they're a client of ours, and so it's kind of interesting that, again, one of those 40 years later type things, like, wow, I actually get to go hang out and try to add as much value as I can back to my old alma mater.
And I think I was reading something the other day on the website, which we all know is true, anything that you read on the internet.
That's right.
But I think you have a rather healthy or strong relationship with the business college over there. Is it Spears? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
And they've acknowledged your achievements in life and so forth. So you still have that connection with Oklahoma State today?
I do. In fact, interestingly, where your mother-in-law and my mom are, Dr. Poole, who was also dean of the business school back in my day, is at Epworth Villa. So yeah, I have lots of connections to OSU.
Well, as most folks know, for the past 2 years, I've been raving about the home of the Maroons, Perry, Oklahoma. And David, you served as CEO or of the Ditch Witch. I don't know if it was Construction Works or just Charles Machine Works, but tell us about your role as CEO there in Perry, America.
Yeah, well, I started there right out of school, 23 years old, and always thought I'd go to New York City or Dallas or LA, or, just had those visions of, got to go live in the big city. And a friend of mine in college, his dad worked at Ditch Witch, and he told me they were interviewing, and I went over and interviewed, and I just sort of instantly fell in love with it. And so we ended up staying there. Meyer and I had already gotten married, and we spent 23 years there and had no dreams, aspirations, anything to ever become CEO. I certainly wanted to have a nice, healthy career, but
Sure.
that was never in my mind that I could ever have that opportunity. So I was as shocked as everybody else when I became CEO, I can tell you.
Yeah. Well, the things that I've done my research on and doing my investigative reporter work on you, one thing I know that you were involved in was Boy Scouts as a troop leader and things of this nature, but also as an Eagle Scout. And so my question is, for those that are really involved in Scouts, they know the discipline and the hard work it is to really jump through the hoops and be committed to be an Eagle Scout. How did that experience prepare you for the work that you're doing today? Can you make a connection there?
Yeah, well, I love the Boy Scouts. I mean, I had a wonderful, started there. The thing I like about the Boy Scouts, for most kids, they don't understand, is that's sort of your first opportunity to work with fire and knives and axes. I mean, it's tying knots, going camping a lot.
Yeah.
And I had some great scoutmasters that helped me do that. Had a unique opportunity, got to go work at what is now called Camp Williams out near Cleo Springs.
Okay.
And I was on staff there for about 5 years. So it was fun. I got paid $18 a week plus tent and food.
What were you going to do with all that money?
I know. Well, fortunately, you never had to spend it because you got Wednesday nights off, and we would drive into Enid and drive up and down Van Buren with our, remaining $18, and that was my. But I got in just under the wire. I was about 2 months shy of my 18th birthday when I got my Eagle Scout. So and it has been. I love meeting other scouts, and all these years later, there's just that common bond.
Well, we want to talk a little bit more about what you're involved in today. My special guest on City Connections today is David Woods, former Enid resident, and he's come back to Enid today to visit with us, get us caught up on what's going on. So thank you for staying with us on City Connections. We'll have more with David Woods right after this. Hi, I'm Steve Keim, and thank you for staying with us on City Connections today. I have the best time because I get to meet folks that's had a connection to Enid, and I find out about their connection, and they still have that connection to Enid. And our special guest today is David Woods. He's the CEO of Giant Partners. So David, again, thanks for staying with us. As people see on the background behind us, they see this Giant Partners logo. The thing I notice about it, giant, but you got a small I.
Right.
So tell us 2 things about the logo, if you would, and also what Giant Partners is all about.
Right. Well, the name Giant just simply came from the story of David and Goliath, which was, if you know that story, who was the real giant in the story was really David, who was the smaller of the two, yet what he did compared to everybody else was he ran at the problem. So actually, when we're working with clients and business owners and things like that, part of what we have to do is learn how do we run at the problems, because they won't get fixed if you don't. The small I is just simply, it's more of an internal to our company reminder that we're to be the smaller, less significant person in that equation. When we're working with somebody, we're not there to grandstand or be the expert in everything about their organization. We're there to be a right hand, add value, and so it's just an internal thing to remind us to be a little more humble in those situations.
Now, I know you're located in Edmond, Oklahoma. You at least have one office there. Can you kind of share with us, as people are watching, they say, well, what does he do and what companies have he worked with? Can you just kind of share some of the maybe organizations that you've worked with in the past few years?
Well, we work with about 500,000 customers every year around the world. And
just
so
500,000.
We have offices here in Oklahoma where it started, but our biggest office now is in Atlanta, where we do a lot of big events and things like that. We have an office in London, and so we work all around the world. There are some, I love working in Oklahoma. So we have, for me personally, the ones I work with the most are all here in Oklahoma. We have teams, obviously, in the other offices. But here, locally, well, of course, they move, but we've done work with Continental Resources and other oil firms. Just a couple of months ago, I didn't get the opportunity to do this, but one of our other executives was working with the city of Enid, the city manager and the mayor and a group kind of on just kind of the plan and strategy and some things like that. Worked with Woods County actually probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and that was really kind of fun because obviously my last name is Woods. I have no connection to that, but it was kind of fun to see Woods County every time.
Yeah, it's nice having a county named after you.
Exactly, it was great. But no, we've worked with large companies, Chick-fil-A, and names you would really recognize, all the way down to small. You know, we work with nonprofits, we work with churches, we work with businesses of all kinds, some as small as 10 people, all the way up to tens of thousands of people. So everything in between.
Can you kind of summarize, you mentioned the companies you work with, Chick-fil-A and things of this nature. Can you kind of summarize in a statement what you all do?
Yeah.
I know it's leadership, it's being the right-hand man, as you said, or whatever, but in layman's terms, somebody's watching this and said, can he sum up what they really can do for me and my organization?
Well, it's actually pretty simple. I mean, if you think about what it takes to grow any organization, again, business, nonprofit, church, it doesn't matter. It takes, you got to have understanding, everybody on the same page of what you do and where you're going. And it's really not about saying yes to more things. It's about creating clear focus to go grow. Now, grow can be revenues, grow can be profits, grow can also be, like in the case of a church, it can be how do we actually go create more impact and maybe grow the church, but sometimes it can be just impact. So that's one aspect. What do we do and how do we get everybody in our team focused on that? And that's how you go move a mountain. The other aspect of that is you can't do that with really good skills up and down the organization. So we have, for example, a program called Master Executive, where we intentionally work at the top of the organization, the directors, vice presidents, CEOs, presidents, all of those, and help them gain the skills of what does it take to really run an organization at the top. And then the other thing we do is we learn that if the skills throughout the organization aren't robust, we've got to do that. And that's the one, personally, I'm the most passionate about. It's called leading up. If I look back in my career and go, how did I get so lucky? And there was luck involved. I was always just a really good right-hand person. And so in hindsight, I went back in and I thought, what if we built some stuff around the very specific skills of being a good right-hand person? And I will tell you, that's one of the most enjoyable things that I do is teaching. I don't care if it's a millennial all the way up to a senior executive. What does it take to be a good right-hand person to someone around you? And we created that a couple of years ago. It's really been fun teaching people how to basically own their career, do great with their career, and serve those around them.
My special guest on City Connections today is former Enid resident David Woods. David, you were talking about the right-hand man. In my case, I married my right-hand woman or support or whatever. Now, you have a unique opportunity, David, because chances are your mother-in-law is watching this interview.
She is.
And so this is time for you to really, really shine and talk about her little girl, Myra. Now, high school sweetheart, not that you have to, and I'm not going to pry, but you said something earlier about, boy, love really makes you do crazy things and makes you stay close by. But your wife is an Enid graduate,
right? But
still, she has that connection with her mom here, right?
That's right.
So you can say anything to flatter your mother-in-law. This is the time to do it.
She's awesome. She's been a great mother-in-law for many, many years. Carolyn Hughes is her name. And when I was 17 and Myra was 16, we'd go over to their house, and she could cook the best pot roast you've ever seen. So I enjoyed that going through college. But I did. I married my high school sweetheart. I was 17, she was 16. Second date, I asked her to marry me. And we kept that a secret for several years because her dad was president of the local steelworkers union, and my dad by then was a two-star general, and either one of which probably would have killed us had they known that we had done that. So we just kept it a secret, just between the two of us, and a few years later we finally got married.
Wow. Yeah. Now the truth comes out.
That's right.
And it takes this interview for that to happen. Well, David, according to your website, and I want to read this so I'll get it right, it says, gifted with the mind of a strategist and the heart of a coach. We grin when David say he's just a regular guy. So the question is, are you that regular guy?
Well, I try to be. Back when, I don't know, whatever it was, 10 or 15 years ago, when I started doing a little more public speaking, I would get quite nervous. I would get kind of hyper, in fact. Mm-hmm. And somebody finally told me to just quit trying to be a motivational speaker and just talk. And so I've learned when you just, I don't know if regular guy is the right term, but I guess it is, that I don't try to be a motivational speaker. I try to communicate and help people. When I'm, even back in the day when I was in kind of corporate world, you know, the gal in accounting that did my expenses, I treated her just the same as I did, you know, the owner of Charles Machine Works.
Right.
And so I've always learned, just treat everybody nice and it's okay. And if that's the definition of a regular guy, then yes, I guess I'm a regular guy, because I just like treating everybody the same.
I think we've had similar paths that I've tried to do some professional speaking through the years. And from a real professional speaker, they made that comment, Steve, don't be anybody else. Don't be Zig or anybody else. Just be you and just share your story, and that's the way it worked. Yeah. My special guest, David Woods on City Connections. We've got a couple more questions for David, but we're going to take this short break. We're going to talk about the book that he's involved in and a little bit on how you can contact David and catch up with him. And we'll do that right after this. Welcome back to our final segment on City Connections. David Woods, my special guest. Again, David is an Enid High graduate and CEO of Giant Partners. David, I know you've been involved in leadership